Welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. On this episode of the Engineering Manager series, Augustus and I spoke to Anshu Prateek, who's the head of engineering at Grab. Grab, of course, is Southeast Asia's leading super app. It provides transportation, logistics, financial services, and a host of other things. At their last fundraise, they were valued at about $14 billion. Anshu has been an engineer earlier at Yahoo, Aerospike, Geo, Freecharge, and a bunch of other companies. He has seen scale in different contexts and from very close quarters. And that's really what we spoke about on this podcast. Anshu spoke about his experience of handling scale, how one should prepare for it, why DevOps is a more comprehensive role today, and his experience of transitioning from an engineer to an engineering manager. This is a fantastic conversation for anyone interested in setting up and building for scale. I hope you like it. Hey Anshu, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time to share your experiences and also your insights.
Yep. Thank you, Roshan, for having me. Thanks, Augustus.
So Anshu, maybe let's begin with your journey. You've done many different things over the last decade. You've had stints at Yahoo, Freecharge, and now you're at Grab. Take us through those experiences and what you've learned in that time.
Yeah. So I'll do it backwards, right? Starting off with my first job or my at the beginning of my career. So I started off with Yahoo as a campus hire, and I ended up being just in the right team. I'll talk about why it was the right team in a minute, but yeah, I ended up in the search team, and the reason why it was the right team was a very unique situation. I think about 6 to 8 weeks into my journey into Yahoo, and then the huge news comes out that, hey, now Yahoo and Microsoft have come up with the licensing for their search story, right? Now imagine, fresh out of college, and the only thing you can think of, oh, the team that I am with is no longer there. That wasn't the reality, but that's how it feels like. So what? Is it time to get back to books, start prepping? And that was my initial reaction, right? Thankfully, it turned out to be a much better story. There weren't much impact because of the changes. I think everyone was taken care of one way or the other. People moved to Microsoft, or people stayed in Yahoo and still worked upon search. So it was a licensing story, but it kind of gave me a unique experience and insight into as to how companies work and how things are done from scratch. Now imagine I was part of the search team, which is a huge product, right? Any given day. It was literally the product. It's search at Yahoo, even at that point of time, was still the component that touched each and every product. We were able to do monitoring for literally every other component, simply because if anything broke anywhere, search, the resolution for search monitoring was down to a minute, right? Or rather was down to 30 seconds. That means if something goes wrong anywhere across entire Yahoo, we will know about it within 30 seconds. Yes, customers could be faster, and especially in today's world where you face an issue and you start tweeting or Facebooking or whatsoever. Those were not the days, but still, I think it was pretty fast enough, and we could do monitoring for everyone else. The way the entire licensing deal worked out to be a great experience, because otherwise it would have been yet another product which was well established, which I would have been just one other guy in the system just doing something else to just keep the system running. Because of the licensing deal, I had to do things from scratch, things which were not existing. It was kind of bridging the system between Yahoo Search and Microsoft systems, moving pieces around, looking as to what the legal contract is and how are we supposed to do. It wasn't just that, okay, now hand over, if any user comes in, just hand it over to Microsoft. That wasn't the case. It was more along the line to ensure that, hey, the user experience, the search results that the user is seeing should be at par, if not better than what Yahoo was offering. So that means we actually had to do ranking for both the search results, what Yahoo was offering versus what was coming from Microsoft Stack, compare those, and only when the relevant score hit a certain value is when we could, send the users over there. So literally creating all of these systems up from scratch, it kind of gave a huge experience and insight. And then working with the legal teams, the business teams, the contractual teams, and then it was a global deal, right? So not just for one market, but literally expanding it across entire globe. Doing market after market, pieces after pieces. It was a huge project to work with. So being part of this project kind of gave me an insight, which I think has helped me throughout the rest of my career. Being part of a team which literally touched each and every component at Yahoo, being part of a team that worked upon existing pieces as well as new pieces. I was like the entire team was responsible for search overall, but I was specifically, let's say, related to multimedia search. Video search in those days was still a pretty new pieces. Twitter was around. People would still tweet links, and we would, surface them within 5 minutes, as those were the latest we were working upon. The reason why I'm bringing all these up is, end of the day, no matter what your pedigree is, no matter where you are coming from, the first job to a certain extent helps to pivot you towards how it will work out for you further down the line. I've had great friends from college who were still part of Yahoo, who were part of different teams. And when I talked to them, when I spoke to them after they moved out of Yahoo, after I moved out of Yahoo, I realized that their experience was very much different than the experience I had. Not to say it was much better or much worse off, but it was a different experience. My experiences helped me to gear towards the right way. Just seeing that scale where search definitely was one of the bigger components, right? The smallest component that we had was still in order of thousands of hosts. We started doing something called large scale production engineering setups, uh, where we kind of talk about people from industry and who bring in their large scale experiences. Some of these key journeys have been continuing. We have quarterly large scale production engineering meetups, where people come in, where ex Yahoo still come in, where people from different parts of the journey still come in. We have LinkedIn, we have Twitter, we have Google folks coming in talking about it even today. All those pieces are what kind of set you up for the right way forward as to how to do things at scale. So Yahoo, like I was saying, the smallest number that I had was, in order of thousands of servers. From there on, I moved on to a company called Aerospike. It's a distributed NoSQL database product company. Scale out there was a completely different ballgame. At Yahoo, the latency SLAs were about 700 milliseconds. What it means, by the time you search, hey, XYZ, and the results, it will be delivered back to you with an upper limit of 700 milliseconds. That's less than a second, but still. Not to say that all results were resulted in 700 milliseconds, but anything beyond 700 milliseconds is what teams will actively look upon. Typically, it will be anything between 200 to 500 milliseconds, but yeah, 700 milliseconds was the SLA. The next company that I joined, I still vividly remember my interview with the lead over there at that point of time, who's still there, Sonel, right? I asked him, hey, what's the largest cluster that Aerospike works upon? His response was, I think the largest cluster is 25 nodes. And I was thinking, okay, if that is your largest cluster, then maybe, that this is not going to work out for me. But then essentially they had different kind of scales. Aerospike was big in ad tech at that point of time. They are still big, and now they have evolved into far more many things. But at that point of time, it was primarily ad tech based. The brag numbers when I joined was 1 million transactions per second. And these million transactions per second were with the SLA of 98.5% queries being sub-millisecond. So now imagine Yahoo 700 millisecond, Aerospike 98.5% of million at sub-millisecond. That is, even if I just put it at 1 millisecond, that is 700x scaling, right? Right out of the box. So scaling doesn't simply mean that, hey, I have so many users, hey, I have so many transactions, hey, I'm doing so much business. It means different things to different people. Aerospike kind of gave me a different kind of insight. The CTO we had at that point of time, the kind of internal discussions we had at Aerospike used to be upcoming features in kernels that were still, being reviewed in kernels git commits, and those were the things that we used to have discussions upon in our internal mailing threads, and that kind of experience was completely mind blowing, right? I took Aerospike through a different journey. When I joined, it was primarily bare metal based. I did a whole bunch of pieces to ensure that it works on AWS, and that's where cloud journey for Aerospike started. All of those pieces. So yeah, effectively between Yahoo and Aerospike, at Yahoo I spent about 4 years. At Aerospike I spent about 2 years. So these 6 years of initial years of my career, I think those were the base. Everything that I've done thereafter has been more or less implementation of whatever I learned in the first 6 years. Not to say that the learning stopped after the first 6 years, but then essentially a major part of everything else that I've done from there on has come from these 6 years. The journey thereafter has been completely huge and of different magnitude. I worked with Reliance Jio for a while, and Jio is massive. This was before Jio was actually launched. I was working on a project which didn't come out in public. It may come out further later down the line, but and I was there for a very brief period of time. I was there only for about 8 to 11 months. The kind of learnings I got in those 8 months, it was amazing. It was mind blowing. Again, the kind of people who were there. There was a person called Soren Hansen. He is one of the Ubuntu core committers, and he was working on OpenStack. The kind of pieces I got to learn from him, I had never heard about it in my prior 6 years of working, right? Again, so maybe I have been extremely fortunate that I always ended up in the right set of team with the right set of people from whom I got the right set of learning. But at the same time, I would still put it, right? Like I have friends from who got the exact same set of group, exact same set of company, exact same set of people. Their takeaway was drastically different. So one key piece I would call out is that, yeah, always kind of, look at the silver lining. Not to say that I haven't found a single place which is perfect on a scale, or which is 10 on 10. It's always a 5 or 6 or 7 or whatsoever, right? So the idea is, if you only focus on whatever is the score that you have got, essentially you have got your 10 on 10. The rest of the pieces, or maybe you focus on that as 90% of the time, and the rest of the pieces become your growth path, right? You say that, hey, this thing works for 6 out of 10 times. The rest of 4, maybe I cannot fix all the 4, but let me try and fix one part of it, right? Even if I can just make it from 6 on 10 to 7 on 10, I have made that 25% improvement, right? That's massive. I've improved 25. I've solved 25% of the problems, which is a huge number. If you go to any company and you tell the CEO or the CTO, hey, I'll be able to solve 25% of your problems in 1 month, he'll be more than happy to have you on board, right? Think of it from that perspective. So learn as much as from whomsoever, from wherever, right? Not to say only from your seniors. It doesn't matter who's there, be it your junior, be it an intern. Almost everyone can teach you. You can learn from everyone, and you can teach everyone. Learning is an ever-growing story. These pieces is what will help you to keep growing and across, right?
If you're listening to this podcast, you want to know how to get better. From the hundreds of conversations I've had with some of the best and brightest folks, the one thing I've noticed is that they're all voracious readers. Now that's easier said than done. And that's where the Daily Reader by CTQ Compounds comes in. The Daily Reader is how you can go from a wannabe reader to a regular reader. Every day, you'll get a carefully curated article on a bunch of interesting subjects like machine learning, mental models, or mythology. And you don't just read them, you also get to share learnings and discuss nuances with a community of super interesting people. The Daily Reader is your best way of building a reading habit and, of course, being better. Check out tinyurl.com/want to be a daily reader. That's want to be a daily reader. And sign up today for a special discount. I'll link to it in the description. Don't forget to check it out.
Freecharge, completely different ballgame. That was the first time when I started off with financial entities, working with RBI mandates and audits and pieces. It was a mind-blowing experience. And everything that I learned at Freecharge is what we implemented at Grab. I would say we and not I, simply because the initial set of people who joined Grab primarily came in from Freecharge, right? A whole bunch of my initial colleagues were from Freecharge. But the way we put in the system, the way I set up the platforms and all of that was primarily driven from our learnings at Freecharge, basically, or rather our learnings from RBI experience. So think of it like this: RBI indeed runs a tight ship, and no matter what we say, it's something. Whatever we learn from RBI experiences is what we have been implementing across Southeast Asia, and that has been working out well, right? No matter what the regulators throw at us, it has worked out well. So this is how I would put it. What as to where all I have been and what all I have been doing and what all I have been learning, and it's definitely been a roller coaster of a ride. From a scale of X thousand of machines to a scale of 25 machines with 700x growth on latency versus Reliance Jio. I don't think I have to talk about scale with what scale it operates as of today to Freecharge and Grab, where we operate across Southeast Asia, 8 countries, a number of people, and daily lives that we touch on a daily basis. This entire journey definitely has been mind-blowingly, simply awesome and fabulous, if I were to put it. So yeah.
Fantastic, Anshu. I think that's the best first answers. One of the best first answers I've heard on the podcast, I think. Right? You've been able to quantify the scale that you've seen across these different stints very well. This is also one of the things that I come upon a lot of times as well, because when you talk of scale, people typically think, oh, e-commerce, number of users, number of transactions, and so on. But even an enterprise product, right, where someone is using the app for let's say 4 hours or 5 hours a day, right? I mean, there's a different type of nuance in terms of the scale itself, right? Let's delve a little deeper on the scaling aspect itself, right? Now, having seen scale at so many different organizations and having set up systems, processes, teams for scale, what are the three things that people should prep for in order to be able to handle that kind of scale?
So if I have to put in just one thing, I would put it like this: you have to be ready for the problem or for the storm before it hits you. Essentially, let's say if your business says that, hey, I want to serve 10 users per minute, 100 users per minute, 1,000 users per minute. What he's talking about, what the business is wanting to say is that, hey, I need to serve those customers now. Now, if you start prepping for 100 customers per minute, that means by the time we have delivered it, now business already wants to do 1,000 customers. Now, if you go back and tell business that, hey, you asked me for 100 customers, I've given you 100 customers, but by that time business wants to do 1,000 customers, you are already 10x too late, right? So always, and prep for kind of the next stage, not to say that, yeah, always, for example, when take any of your favorite e-commerce companies, when they launch, whenever they launch, they were not thinking about that this is where we will be 10 years down the line or 10 months down the line. So not to say that you have to think X days, weeks, months out of the window, but definitely kind of think about it as to what the ask is today and what would we like to do maybe X periods down the line. X could be weeks, months, quarters, but definitely always think way ahead, at least partly ahead of you of yourself, as to what your systems could do and what would you like to do, rather than just saying, hey, this is what we do need to do now, right? That's one aspect. To further build upon it, that doesn't mean that, hey, you always keep over engineering for the future. There's always a balance that you need to put out as to what the reality is today versus what is doable. And for example, let's say in order for me to serve 10 customers or 100 customers, I can do it in 10 days. But if 1,000 customers is going to take me 100 days, I don't think that 10x growth scale out is going to help anyone, right? So then that's where we have to take the call and then say that, hey, maybe I can do 10 customers or 100 customers in 10 days. I can do maybe 200 customers in 12 days. That is an okay, acceptable range. But or at the same time, if you say that, hey, I can do 50 customers in 3 days and 100 customers in 10 days, that's much better. You can do maybe much lesser number of customers, but the amount of time that you are asking for, that increment delta is much lesser, right? So always kind of take a pragmatic, practical approach as to what is doable versus what is the ask and what's the reality, right? Business would always want to do more. Customers will always want more. And everyone almost on an everyday basis wanted it yesterday. And until unless you already had it yesterday, you are way too late. So think about it as what is practical, what is feasible, and what would be the best customer experience. When I say customer experience, it's not just your external customer. Your teammates are your customers, your peers are your customer, your managers are your customers. Uh, if you are a team lead or a team manager, your fellow teammates are the people who report to you are also your customers, right? So end of the day, ensure that everyone is happy, all of your customers are happy. And how do you manage that? How do you think about it? That's the other aspect. So between these two pieces, to always ensure that, hey, working out for the future and then seeing what is the practical and what makes sense. If for the third aspect of what to look for in terms of scaling, I think the biggest piece I would call out is scale differs, and scale is a different number for everyone, right? What might be large scale for you might be 1 second for someone else. It's all relative. So ensure that people kind of think about it at the same level, and ensure that they kind of get down to a similar piece rather than talking objectively that, hey, I want it to be very fast. What is very fast for you? Like I said, 700 millisecond versus sub millisecond. What was very fast for Yahoo was like 700 slow for Aerospike. So ensure that all of you get kind of like everyone is on the same page when they're saying, hey, I want it to be very large. I want it to be very huge. I want it to be massive. I want to be serving a number of people. Ensure that we are putting down numbers and everyone is on the same page. One good example, I would say that in the initial days of our launch, at Grab, one of my friend slash internal engineering manager would come to me and say, hey, I want to scale out, and what is it? I would tell him, do not come to me till you have reached 1,000 requests per second. I have designed my system just that no matter how bad it is, it will manage pretty well till 1,000 requests per second, right? So yeah, do not over-engineer. Do not think that, hey, I need to do so many pieces, but at the same time, ensure that everyone is on the same page and we are delivering what needs to be done now, rather than just holding it out for the future that, hey, tomorrow I'll be ready for 10,000 users, when in reality, you may just have 1,000 users and you may not get to those 10,000 users simply because you've delayed out for the initial 1,000 users. So yeah, time, velocity, and being pragmatic, all of those things is what's going to help you scale. So yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting. I think we've spoken a lot about scaling, and it's something that really excites me as well. I'm just curious, like, is there like an instant which you can like recount in your scaling stories that that comes to your mind when maybe something happened or there was a surge expected or something, some interesting scaling incident, and what you guys did to handle it? We can delve a little deeper into the tech and kind of understand. Maybe we can talk about it so that our audience has like an interesting story to listen to.
Yep. Uh, Let me bring in a story from Freecharge days, right? And this was post demonetization. Uh, Before you ask the questions, no, we did not know about demonetization before it happened. So yes, that was a very interesting date. And post that, right? A couple of days down the line, one point we realized that definitely traffic increase, all of that happened. And then after that, we started seeing a pattern. Every day at around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we would start seeing our traffic peaking out, right? And that would be pretty much it. We could see that, hey, there is nothing which is, I mean, people are definitely, they need to do things. It was immediate after demonetization. And still we were kind of getting stuck. Like our systems would simply refuse to go further beyond a certain point of time. We're like, hey, what's happening? And it wasn't to say that things were failing or anything. We were just getting stuck over there. That's when we took a step back, started looking at our systems as to what was happening. There was a particular DB in use, and that's when we realized that, not to say that the DB itself had the limitation, but more along the line, the way it was architected within our application at that point of time, right? But because prior to that, that scale was good enough, it was managing. We had never reached that peak. We never used to hit these challenges. And post demonetization, it literally became a story of every afternoon. Every afternoon, 3 p.m., everyone would be on the call to see, hey, what's happening. So I think it took us about 2-3 days to figure out what's happening and what's blocking. And then we say, hey, time to re-architect. We did some quick journey around and we figured out a way that, hey, we need to do sharding and all of those pieces. So I don't remember the exact number of days, but I think within 4 to 5 days after the initial thing. So first 2-3 days for us to identify, and then one or 2 days after that is when, like, yeah, we identify this is what needs to be done. So we did a quick POC. Okay, this is how we need to do all the entire sharding, etc. And maybe in a day or two. So end to end, about 4 to 5 days of journey, and then we implemented the solution. And because again, we were doing all of this with live traffic, right? The entire demonetization traffic coming in. We were doing this. We ran block into problems. When we did the first round of change, it worked well on staging, but didn't work out that creating prod. So it was again, okay, re-scratch. The solution itself was good. Somehow in the implementation, it wasn't working out. So essentially, okay, redo it all the way from scratch. Then we did it again. And it was, yes, one other of those long nights. But I think by the end of the night, or by late, by early morning, we were able to have it in place. And next day, if I remember correctly, from the numbers that we were hitting, the next day we immediately shot up to about 170% of that number, right? So imagine that for 2-3 days, we were limiting ourselves. Business wanted to come in, things wanted to come in, but simply because of our stack at that moment, we were getting limited. So it wasn't a huge, like I said, if we were able to implement it in 2 days when we were stretched, if we had planned about it upfront, if we had thought about it, it would have been a much easier. We could have easily done it within a sprint, spread it out. But simply because, yeah, time was of essence, and we just rolled it out quickly. So imagine traffic going up 170% overnight with a simple. I won't say it was a simple change, but a change that we could put into place within overnight, right? That was definitely a massive learning pieces as to how to go about things. I think if I have to put it out in context, I had never worked on that specific DB solution before. It was kind of a new thing for me, but no one in the team had that much of experience. But thankfully, to our favorite search engine, if you know what exactly needs to be done, how it needs to be done is a matter of implementation. And doing that, the search engines are around always to help you. So if you know what's the right way to do, if you have the right systems architecture in mind, if you have the right system engineering mindset, or rather you think about it the right way and you know how we should be doing it, then figuring out how exactly to do it is not too much of a challenge. And so that's what we did. And that definitely was one of my experiences that I'll talk about. So yeah.
Very interesting, Anshu. Thank you for sharing that. Another thing which comes to mind is like, how do we like as engineers, right? There's always this. I think there's this two-pronged thing which happens in our roadmaps. One is, do we go back and refactor something which is already there versus building new features? Business sometimes asks us for new features, and then at the same time, you know that there's technical debt accumulating, and then given your scaling thing as well as a third piece of this puzzle, what do you think about this balance, and what has been your experience so far in terms of balancing refactoring versus building stuff, especially stuff that's hard to build, right? It could be new features, it could be something innovative, it could be like maybe adding a new component to your existing stack, maybe adding some sort of ML, AI, or whatever, blockchain, whatever it is that you want to experiment with. How do you balance that out with like going back and refactoring, bringing the discipline to something which is already there?
Yeah, that definitely I think is a interesting problem statement, a challenging one, and something that unfortunately I think each and every software engineer is as well versed to, right? There is no easy answer to it. There are times when you prioritize product, there are times when you prioritize tech debt, there are times when you prioritize stability, there are times when you prioritize security. So it all depends as to where you are in your journey and what is needed most. Let's say or think about it like this, that whatever you want to work upon, what's the ROI of that? That's the way how I would put it, right? For example, let's say if the example that I just gave, right? It wasn't really an interesting piece. Maybe if we would have put it in our sprint planning, it would not have been an exciting piece. But simply because it was blocking us, that became a burning issue, and that had the highest ROI at that point of time. It wasn't a simple change. It touched one of the basic systems, and literally, I think it needed support from each and every team. I think no one had to question or think about it that, hey, can we do it, or will other things be impacted? Because that was the single topmost burning thing, right? Other piece, I would kind of give out an example from my present experience at Grab, just to kind of put us to context as to what is important and at what scale do we need to do, at what rate do we need to do. Something which we were working upon for KYC, right? Usual delays, and now team is doing a check as to, hey, what's happening, where are we? And team says that, hey, we are 2 weeks delayed on that. And then we get to know that, hey, because of these 2 weeks delayed, there are agents on the ground who are not getting paid because of XYZ of this thing. And this was something which the teams did not know. The engineering team had no idea that something like this was happening. So this was, I think, on a Wednesday or a Thursday evening that we got to know that, hey, this is what it is. And this will take about 2 weeks for us to roll out, and people are actually getting impacted. Someone's paycheck is actually getting impacted. From that Wednesday, Thursday evening to the next Monday morning, something that was supposed to take about 2 weeks, in 4 weeks, it was done and dusted and rolled out, simply because it was actually impacting people's ability to earn, right? So that is one of my most favorite stories. So it's kind of always assess the ROI of what is needed when and where. It may not be the most exciting piece that you want to work upon, but ROI, there are various ROIs. One ROI is, hey, for you as an engineer, what is most exciting? Adopting that newest, shiniest piece of technology is always most exciting piece. But then you have to think about it. Hey, is it really worth it? Is it really helpful? Is it really going to serve the customers? And customer, like I said earlier, right? It's not just your external customer. Everyone around you is your customer. So think about it from that perspective. And again, tech debts are something try to avoid as much as possible. But like I said, there are times when stability becomes a feature as a task, right? So whatever has the highest ROI, focus on that at that point of time and then deliver. Be it stability as a feature, be it security as a feature, be it the features as a feature, or be it, hey, time to solve our tech debt. If essentially that's where you have to go back and have a conversation with your product and business team. Right now, you give me 10 days, and then the rate at which we can do things 100 days down or 20 days, 30 days down the line will be much faster. Or if you don't give me these 10 days and then we keep working at the same pace, that means essentially everything that you want me to do will take 20 days, 20 days, 20 days, rather than me taking 10 days right now. And then down the line, we can maybe give it in 7 days, 8 days. So you need to have that conversation. And it's not to say that business and product teams do not understand various pieces, right? Almost everyone will always be happy if you can give them things faster. You always have to say that, hey, what all is needed? What's the impact if you don't do this? It could be a stability impact, it could be a security impact, it could be a regulatory impact, all of those pieces, right? For us as financial entities, we have security and compliance first. Features can be on a hold or a pause if it's a question of security and compliance. So it's always a matter of ROI. It becomes a tough, I think the question that I would put out is, rather than us assessing what needs first and how to prioritize between them, I think the way to look at it is put a weightage to those, put an ROI to those, and then see how does it help, how does it impact, right? And then essentially you've got your answer. Think of it like this: you have $10, you want to buy 5 things. It's up to you whether you buy 5 of the same thing or you buy 2 or 5 different things. You have to see what is most helpful and where do you want to invest that money. Time is your most valuable asset. So you have to think about as to what's the most useful place to invest it in. So yeah.
It's pretty interesting because typically there are no perfect solutions, right? I mean, it's always trade-offs, and it's always like choosing the less worse of the 2 or 3 or 5 options that are available. And in essence, that entire transition from being an engineer to like a engineering manager, I suppose, is in understanding these trade-offs better and making the right decisions, right?
Yep, definitely. I think, and in fact, this is a conversation that happened yesterday with one of my peers, and he was calling on the very same thing that, hey, there are times when people may not be able to call out the right thing, hey, what needs to be done, or like what's the right value of it. There are times when it boils down to the last few seconds of it that, hey, this is something that we, for example, if you are in a incident, right, an outage, then whatever is the fastest way out to recover out of that outage is the most important aspect. So definitely, I think leveraging what's worth it, what's the lesser of the two evils, or uh, whichever has the higher ROI or whatever has the highest cost versus the returns. Definitely assessing all of those, and how soon can you do it, how fast can you do it, is it's what's your value addition as an engineer or as a leader, right? If you say that, okay, I need a spreadsheet and then I'll come back on it with a report for 10 days, where in reality, the implementation of it, no matter what the solution is going to be one day, then maybe it's not the right ROI. So yeah, definitely looking at it in how much time we can do it is one of the biggest aspects.
Right. So in the last 5-10 years, DevOps as a function itself has evolved a great deal, right? I mean, you can see that by the number of fancy tools that you guys have right now, right, for monitoring all of those things. I mean, from those plain Jane, very developer types command interfaces, it's gone to like someone actually investing in UX resource for this, right, for developers. So how has that evolution been in your opinion, and what are you most excited about at this point of time from a DevOps perspective?
Yep. I think one thing I'll call out is that as to whatever I'm going to say about DevOps, it's different people who listen to it will still make out different answers as to what I'm saying. It's like it might be the exact same sentence, it might be the exact same statement, but everyone hearing it will have their own interpretation. So first and foremost, let me put out as to what do I think of DevOps, or what, and it might kind of become that, okay, just parroting yet another standard piece, right? DevOps, end of the day, is a way of thinking. It's not a job description or a role or something to say that, hey, he or she is the DevOps. It's more along the line to get the right mental models to do whatever is needed. And DevOps essentially is your backend engineer is a DevOps, your front-end engineer is a DevOps, your QA is a DevOps, your operational person is a DevOps, your DBA is a DevOps, your engineering manager is a DevOps, your CTO is a DevOps, right? Having that right mindset is the important aspect of it. The way pieces have evolved, I think when I joined Yahoo, the role was called a systems engineer, and having a good systems engineer is still something valued even today, right? No matter how many cloud providers kind of abstract it out, if you have a good system engineer, you can actually figure out when that cloud provider underlyingly goes wrong, right? So being a good systems engineer, starting from that perspective, to the age-old model of having a system administrators, Linux administrators, to system engineers, to operational engineers, to production engineers, to DevOps, and then to SREs, various pieces, right? The way I'll say about these streams overall is, look at it like this, that no matter what happens, end of the day, you need to ensure that the job is done. It doesn't matter what role you are in, what is it. At the other hand, you also have to ensure, I think one of the most critical aspect for someone to be a great systems engineer slash person heavily vested in DevOps technology slash operational engineers slash SRE is they have to be really competent in what they need to do, and they have to really think about it from automation first perspective, right? The way I put it is that, hey, all of these tool sets help, but it's not going to help that every time you need a problem and then you say, I have that tool, now I'll go to that tool and I'll do a click next, and it will be done. If you are still thinking about it that someone needs to be there and someone will be doing it that click next, essentially it's a problem statement that one person who needs to click next can never be around, can never go on a vacation, can never take a time off, and you'll always be stuck, right? There are various mental models around it. People may say that, hey, that's my job security. If I'm the only person who knows how to do that click next, my job is assured. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. Even if you are the only person who knows that click next, what to do, no, we might not find a different person, but we might find a different system altogether. We might find a different solution altogether, right? Not to say that, hey, these pieces will always become old and then there will be no one around. NASA is a great example where they are still looking for Fortran and Pascal developers simply because that's what their systems are in. But then those are exceptions rather than the norms, right? So the way I would put it, or rather what my individual thinking is, and the way I propose to my teams, I think of it like this, that by the time it comes back to you the third time, it should be automated. It doesn't mean that every time it comes to you, the first time it comes to you, say, no, let me automate it first and then I'll give out. That isn't helpful. But by the time it comes out, when it comes out to you second time, you are thinking, oh, this is what I did the first time. Even the first time should not be completely manual. Hey, this is what I did. And on basis of that, I can do it to a slightly better extent. And when it comes to you, it comes back to you the third time, oh, looks like it's a promise that's going to keep happening. Let me ensure that it never comes back to me. Either I resolve it for good, or I create a platform using which the end user, whoever be that end user, be it the backend engineer, be it the QA, be it the SRE, be it the DBAs, they can do it on their own, right? So ensure that that's what it is. Ensure that everyone is enabled to run pieces on their own, and no one has a blocker, and no one needs to come to you. I think the way I call it out, right? If and not only in COVID times, but even in pre-COVID times, when Grab has presence across 8 countries, and I used to travel a lot. And my favorite saying was that, hey, if I'm traveling, that means there's an escalation. It doesn't mean that if things would have just worked out without me traveling, I would have loved to stay at home and not travel, right? So how do you ensure that there's no escalation and everything just works out of the box? Think of it like this. If everyone, Roshan, you have a phone, Augustus, you have a phone, right? You remember taking the phone out of the box. It came with the manual. Did you read that manual? Did you have to read that manual, before saying, okay, this is how I start the phone, this is how I make the call? Think of it like that.
I may be an outlier, but yeah, I think most people don't.
Yeah. So reading the manuals is a different aspect, right? Have we getting those shiny pieces and then going through manuals are different pieces. But think of it like this: that from your end product perspective, it should be your favorite shiny phone, where you may be paying a bomb for it, but you don't have to bother about this. Yes, you may occasionally search as to how to do a specific thing or how to do specific things faster, but the basic ways of it is kind of to say that, hey, it just works out of the box, right? So DevOps is essentially ensuring that whatever is needed by whosoever is the customer works out of the box. They do not have to think about, they do not have to go and read a documentation. They do not have to see, hey, how is it where? It should be pretty intuitive, and it should be like, okay, hey, if I need to do a build, if I need to do a deployment, if I need to do a logging, if I need to do a monitoring, if I need to see an impact of a feature that I rolled out yesterday, or if I need to see the metric that when the end user, my external user, clicks on add to cart or clicks on pay now using credit card or pay now using wallet, this is what the user journey has been. All of that should be pretty intuitive to whoever that customer is. And it's not an easy ask. It's not something that should be there on day one, but rather we should be designing our systems keeping that perspective in mind. Like I said earlier, that's one of the key things for us to scale out, right? Ensure that you're building systems that are needed for few weeks, months, quarters down the line, and we are not building systems which were needed yesterday and that we are delivering today. Because essentially, if you are building systems that were needed yesterday and we have built today, essentially they have already become old tomorrow, right? So yeah, think of it like this. So that's how I would put it as the DevOps model of pieces. Yes, there are specific tool sets which kind of add on to all of these pieces, be it around build, be it around testing, be it around monitoring, logging, deployment, whole bunch of pieces, right? Things will keep growing. Not to say the older technology has gone out of the way. There are still pieces, enterprise things running on monitoring like Cacti and Azure, and then the CheckMK versions of it, versus the places where now you have Datadog, where essentially everything is managed out of the box for you and you do not have to bother about it. For all you know, 10 couple of quarters down the line, people will say, "Oh, you are still on Datadog? That's so old age, right? Now you just think about it and it is there." So imagine pieces like that. So that's how it would be, and there might be things which may make a comeback, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. Always ensure that you are kind of setting things up as to how, as and when the next ask is there, you can say that, oh, this is what you want. This can be done using this. Here is the solution. Now go ahead and just make use of it. Only when we are able to do that is when we have met the right DevOps setup, the right DevOps piece. Essentially, think of it like as a fast serving food chain, right? You go to McDonald's and you order something. You do not expect them, oh, you want a McD? Okay, let me go and get the burgers and come back to me in a couple of hours, right? That's not going to work out. You need it then and there, and that's only time it's going to be successful. And same is pretty much true for DevOps as well.
Makes sense. Something that crossed my mind is, right, as we transition from engineers to engineering managers and engineering leadership, what are some key challenges which you faced in your journey, and what are the things that are keeping you up at night, and what are your thoughts on these challenges? Just an
Yeah.
open-ended question to get to know what are some key challenges.
So I actually
Yep.
had a related question. So in your current role at this point of time, what are some 2 or 3 high-level challenges that you're solving for? You know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'll let me take the second question first, right? As to what are the key challenges that I'm working at, that we are working at out here at Grab. I'll take just one small component of part of it, right? Not huge. Grab is a company that is present across 8 markets, across 8 countries, right? It's Grab is not just one business. It's literally a group of various businesses. We have transport, we have food, we have payments. Within payments, we have a whole bunch of things. We have insurance, we have lending. We are working on a whole lot of different such components, right? The part of Grab that I work with, Grab Financial Group, right? I'm responsible for all things Grab Financial Group, or GFG as we call it. Essentially, internally, in terms of number of entities, because again, in financial / regulated pieces, every line of business has to be its own entity, and then again various markets and pieces. So think of it like this, that I have 8 countries, I have X number of businesses. I literally have to do 8 into X number of times things over and over and over and over again. If I have to do it that, hey, every time I have to set up a new line of business for a new entity and I need X number of days or weeks for it, it's going to be challenging. I mean, there are multiple challenges. One is business isn't going to wait for me for that long. Second is my engineers are going to get bored if I ask them that, hey, now you have to do this setup not 1 times, not 2 times, but 8 into X times, right? They are simply going to be bored and they'll say, okay, it was great working with you. See you again later sometime soon, right? So how do you ensure that everything works in a manner such that it scales out, right? And that was the piece which I was talking about, that, hey, how to do scale out. When we designed our systems initially, we always knew from day one that, hey, it's a question of when rather than if, that we would need to do all of these, that we would need to work across multiple countries. We would need to do it n number of times over and over again, because that's how financial entities work, line of businesses work. So yeah, we designed a system from day one that this is how it would be, but that doesn't mean that everything just works out of the box. Every new setup is a learning. We learn new pieces, new things. Pieces keep changing. When we started, monitoring was one way, then we did another way, and then we now let's say we are going to work on a new system, right? How do you ensure that all of these things keep working without breaking? Like, you add new pieces, that doesn't mean that the old piece should break now. When you are adding something new, it is not uh, just a repeat of old thing, but rather now you are improving upon the challenges or the learnings that you had from last time, and keep scaling that up. So essentially all of these pieces of how do we ensure that we scale up, how do we ensure that our team grows, how do we ensure that our engineer grows, right? Everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to get that promotion, everyone wants to be at the next level. So scaling out, one big aspect of scaling out is scaling out people. Let's say you hired a great engineer, but if that engineer is simply stuck at wherever he was, essentially, if you are not able to grow them, that essentially is our failure. If we are not able to grow our team, that essentially is our failure, because we are not able to get them the right guidance, we are not able to get them the right training, we are not able to provide them the right set of environment for them to grow. So between these two pieces, doing something over and over again and doing it in a new manner and ensuring that the team is growing, these are some of the challenges that everyone keeps working upon always, right? And if I were to put it, I think after a certain point of time, the cycle repeats. So this is something which one of our internal grabbers said in a different conversation, right? He got a particular problem statement, and then his response was, yeah, I have seen it over and over again at Grab. Yes, this is what we are going to try to do. This is how it's going to be, right? So imagine that being at that place where things just keep repeating over and over again. And I would agree to it to a certain extent. Uh, Throughout my career, I think what I have realized that it almost always is kind of the same problem statement, just with a slightly different flavor in a slightly different implementation. But the core basics problem statement remains the same. How we approach them and how we resolve them and what's the next step is what's different. So yeah, that's what I would put it as to what is the next biggest thing that I'm doing. In fact, there's a new line of business coming up where we are setting it up, and we are doing it in a manner which is, let's say, 10x more needed to be 10x more stringent and regulated and secure as compared to what GFG has been so far. So that itself is a interesting journey and experience, kind of seeing as to, hey, this is what we did over the last 4 years, and now this is what we need to do over the next few years. And then, and other thing which I may add is that almost always every time you do something, or rather, this is what I do. Every time I do something, I almost always know what is its path to deprecation. Even before I launch a product internally, even before I say, hey, this is the next step, I also know what is its next, what's the step after that. Essentially, that roadmap is clear to me that, hey, this is a stepping stone, this is how it will put it, and then this will be deprecated because of XYZ, and that will be the next product, right? So always ensuring that that is what is there. These pieces is what's gonna ensure that you are growing, your team is growing, the product is growing. Uh, Going back to the first question, if I may recollect the question correctly, it was that, hey, how do you grow from an engineer to an engineering manager, or what's the mental model that you should put in, right? For that, I will say that one key aspect there is that you need to be a really good engineer. That's key to being a good engineering manager. What does a good engineer, being a good engineer mean? Being a good engineer simply doesn't mean that, hey, I'm great at doing whatever I know, and hence I'm a good engineer. Being a good engineer means that there are various aspects of it. One of them is that, hey, asking the right set of questions, providing the right set of solutions, that's one piece. And here I'll mix in something, right? Something that I learned as a good engineer, and then something that I have learned as a manager. As an engineer, you are told that, hey, you should ask the 5 whys, right? The 5 whys kind of help you to lead to identify a better solution or underline or find out the root cause of a problem. As a manager, one of the pieces which I learned about that, hey, one way to ask a question in a non-confrontational manner is not to put it as a why. Why did you not do this? Why are you not doing this? Rather than saying that, hey, what is the blocker? What is the challenge that we are facing? What is the reason that we were not able to do so? So essentially, instead of asking those 5 whys, kind of mixing my engineering person plus the managerial person, kind of asking the right set of questions in a manner such that it's non-confrontational, as well as helps you to get the right answer and ensure that you are helping everyone around. This is something which I'll go back to my first experience, and which I did, and I never realized that that was of a big impact, or that the team appreciated it. We were in yet another incident, some outage, something happening, and simply because my team was busy, it was there, right? I hung around, I kind of asked the right set of questions, and I was there till the issue was resolved, even though it wasn't something that I was part of or nothing that But later on, I realized the very next day that the team appreciated that I was around, to help them out or ask them, even though it had nothing to do. So a good engineer doesn't simply mean that, hey, I am able to do whatever I know my role and I can do whatever it is. A good engineer means that, hey, this is a problem statement. I do not have a solution right now, but let me help whatever way I can, right? That is part of it. And essentially, when you have that zeal to help others, even when time is fixed, everyone has 86,400 seconds a day, and it's up to you to decide how do you spend that time. When you are investing in the right manner, not only to say that, hey, this is my job, this is my task, let me do it, but also to say that, hey, how I can further help others in my team or in horizontal teams, in other teams, how can I use it to learn and grow myself and help and grow others. When you are thinking about these things, this is what helps want to be a good engineering manager, right? Because managers, end of the day, are not it's not only about getting the project done or managing people and their expectations, but also ensuring that, hey, you are helpful, you are helping everyone, you are helping your peers to grow, you are helping your teammates to grow, you are helping your reportees to grow, you are helping your manager to grow, and you are helping business and all the leaders to grow, right? Essentially, it's all about ensuring that everyone is growing together, learning together in pieces. When you have that mindset, that's when it's kind of one of, if I have to put it, that's kind of a prerequisite to ensure that, hey, you are a good engineering manager. There might be a whole lot more things. I won't say that I'm a great engineering manager. Fun fact, I've been a reluctant engineering manager. I didn't want to be an engineering manager. Like, I was pretty much sure that when I used to have, conversations with my friends and families that, hey, I only want to be an IC. This is how it is. One way or the other, I realized no matter where I go, it not necessarily only when I was looking for a job change, but even internally, right? It always looked like that maybe it worked out for me that way, that, yeah, the expectation was that, hey, now I can help and lead the team. Or maybe it was simply because I was doing it in a not so obvious manner, or maybe it wasn't clear to me. I didn't look at it myself in that light, but it was maybe clear to my teams and my managers, right? And maybe I also got lucky. I almost always had the right set of managers, or maybe I'll put it like what I was saying earlier. Maybe I always looked at the 7 of those 10 aspects, right? Rather than saying that, hey, this thing is wrong. This is my manager doesn't help me on these aspects or anything like this. I always look at, hey, what all can I learn from my manager and how can my manager help me? So I think that has always helped and worked out, and it has definitely has been a great learning experience. I have been consistently learning and growing, and maybe the other aspect, if I have to put down as to what makes a great engineering manager, that zeal to learn and grow, I think that will be the other one, to ensure that you are a great learning manager. So essentially, you are enabling your teams, you are enabling your peers, you are enabling everyone around to learn and grow, and at the same time, you are also learning and growing. These would be some of the key aspects for you to grow. Doesn't matter what your path is. You might want to continue as an individual contributor. That's perfectly fine. You want to go on a managerial path. That's perfectly fine. But I think you should always need to keep an eye out as to what is my path to grow and how can I grow, and how do I ensure everyone else around me grows. So I think that would be the key aspect.
Right. Great answer. Yeah, and especially all of the non-functional bits that you mentioned, right, which become super interesting as you make that transition. So, one of the other aspects of your experience is the fact that you've done the 0 to 1 journey a few times, right? So you've had to work with founding teams or leadership teams to build some things from scratch. So, I mean, technical co-founders are such a rarity, and they're so sought after, right? I mean, literally every business guy is searching for a tech co-founder. So in this initial stage, how should a CTO or a technical person work with the founder, and what expectations should a founder have from this person as well? So if you could talk about some of the nuances of that 0 to 1 journey, right? I think that could be a great lesson for people who are listening.
Yep. I think if I have to put out just one aspect of 0 to 1 journey, it's no one knows all the answers, and no one even knows all the questions, right? That's how I put it. If I had all the questions upfront, I would say that, hey, yeah, maybe I can try and figure out the answers to it. It's a journey. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's a journey. I have done it a couple of times, and I'm pretty much sure, like I said, we are again setting up a new business. It will still be a journey. It won't be simply a fact that, hey, because we have done it so many times and we know exactly how it's going to work out. It's still going to be a journey. The most important aspect is, or a couple of important aspects. If one thing I were to put out, I would say it's empathy, right? Kind of always know and understand as to, hey, what is it that the other person is thinking? What is it that the other person wants? And how can you deliver it? That other person could be your CTO, could be your CEO, could be your co-founder, could be your manager, or could be a person who's reporting to you, right? Let's say you are the founder or co-founder, and your teams are coming to you and say that, hey, what do we need to do? You may not have all the right answers, but more along the line to ensure that, hey, we are able to guide them to see what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. If and to ensure that both of you are thinking that same thing, right? Like what I mentioned a bit earlier as well. We might all be listening to the same story, hearing the same story, but our interpretation could be different. So ensure that everyone is on the same page, everyone is thinking and hearing and understanding the same thing, right? And not to say that the particular famous game of when you say 8x to a person in a queue. So you start with one story, and by the time the story ends, by the time the queue ends, the story passes across the queue, it ends up with a completely different version of that story, right? Something like that should not happen. It definitely becomes a problem statement when the teams grow and when pieces happen. But it may happen even in smaller teams if the right communication channels are not set up, if the right mental model is not there, right? If you may think that, hey, this is what my manager asked, or this is what the co-founder asked, let me just get it done no matter what. That may not be the right thing. What the founders have said that, hey, this is what I need to do. There again, we have to present that, hey, this is what it works. I can do it in manner X at a certain cost in so much time, versus I can take slightly longer at a lower cost at so much quality, right? The triangle of cost, quality, and speed, right? Those three pieces is what you have to work together with and ensure that are kind of presenting the right set of questions, the right set of solutions, giving them, if not all, then most of the feasible or the first or the topmost 2 or 3 options, and then helping them choose the right answers, right? They may not know all that. They may say, okay, you figure out I need to get it done, and then you say whatever is the way you choose. Then it might be your solution to, or your option to decide upon, and then say, hey, this is what we think is the best way out. Let's do it until unless anyone has concerns. Is what I would put it. Other key aspect is to ensure that, hey, people are unblocked. If someone is blocked for more than half a day on any issue, on any problem, that's more than enough time that they should have been blocked. So ensure that everyone across the process is unblocked. Doesn't matter where do they sit in the hierarchy, even if it's a flat, or doesn't matter who they are. Try to ensure that they are not blocked for more than half a day, and or rather, if even they might not be completely unblocked, but they have help if they are stuck on any problem statement for more than half a day, right? Not everything can be resolved in half a day, but they should not be stuck at the same place where they were in the morning, and at lunchtime they should not be in the same place. And definitely by evening, something should have changed. Either they have got more help, or they have got some certain different ideas, or there are more people looking at that problem statement. So yeah, these are some of the key pieces which I would put out, right? What I think one example I would put out is, again, one of the earlier processes, one of the earlier projects at Grab. We got a mandate from regulators, and that particular, because the earlier business was transport only, and now we were doing a payments business. The mandate was drastic. I went around asking teams, hey, can we do it? Can we do it? And because it was financial, everyone said, okay, let's see how we could do it. I think next story we came out that yeah, we can do it, but it needs us about 4 to 6 quarters to do it. Obviously, that's not going to work out, right? When we launch it in the next quarter. So we went back to the then CEO and say that, hey, this is what the problem statement is, and we definitely can't do this. This is the alternative. But for us to have this alternative sorted, we need to talk with the regulators and auditors and legal teams and compliance teams, right? So we got that. The CEO understood the problem statement. He came on board. We had multiple calls. We identified the problem statement and said that, hey, this is a problem statement, this is the expected, and this is how we would do it. Everyone understood and agreed to that solution. And something that was supposed to take 4 to 6 quarters, we implemented it in a regulator-friendly manner in a quarter. That was a timeline that was needed, right? So ensuring that something like this everyone is aware of the problem and everyone is working on the problem. Everyone is working towards the same problem statement in the same manner, rather than pulling the teams apart in different directions. I think these will be some of the key pieces which are going to help the co-founders and which is going to help the team. Think of it like this, that when you join a team, when you join a company, very rarely you have joined there for charity, right? You have joined there because you are invested in it. You might be getting salary, but or you may be there for the stocks, but end of the day, you are invested in there. You are investing your time and you want the best possible return of that time. So one way to, and one of the topmost ways to ensure that, hey, the business is growing, the teams are growing, people around you are growing, and it's your job to ensure, hey, how does everyone keep growing? So, yeah.
All right. That's a great note to end the podcast on, Anshu. This was a fascinating conversation. I think we uncovered many different nuances and really the depth of insight on some of these things were amazing. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Anshu. Thanks, Agatha. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Definitely a pleasure being here and looking forward to talk to you next sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.